Hello, everyone. My name is Andrea Thompson, and I'm the founder and director of the Film Girl Film Festival. And here we have our last Q&A of the weekend. Phew. So, no offense, everyone. So I am privileged to be here with a few people who are directing the features in my festival. These are the Non-Milwaukee features directors. So, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me.
Hi there.
Hello, and I'd like to just go around and please briefly introduce yourself and give a brief synopsis of your film. Jimmy, why don't we start with you?
Sure. So my name is Jimmy Borton. Me and my wife, Melissa, produced a film called Ginger, which is a dramatic comedy about a 23-year-old woman who is diagnosed with breast cancer and kind of tries to put up all the pieces of her life together while she's losing what to her is different pieces of her identity. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And thank you. And Heidi?
Well, I'll start, and then I'll let my co-director finish off with it. My name is Heidi Phillipson, and I'm the producer and co-director of a feature called Darcy, and it is a drama about a 15-year-old who is on the cusp of her 16th birthday, and she lives sort of down and out in the middle of nowhere with her parents who, John, take it from there.
Oh wow, it's like the baton. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
Well, we couldn't let two guy directors, go in a row, man.
We're true co-directors, so
Right.
I want him to have his part in this.
Right. Well, her family run a no-tell motel, and it with the kind of people, pimps and prostitutes, and people on the edge of the law, and she's sort of coming into her sexual awakening amongst all of these unusual people. And it's a movie that my wife and we co-wrote together, and we had a tremendous experience with Heidi as our producer and co-director, and also as an actress in the film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And yeah, both of your features are incredibly different, but they're all they both center around young women who are incredibly vulnerable, not in kind of opposite ways. Jimmy, the protagonist, Ginger, she's a bit lost after graduation, but she has a secure foothold in a way. Economically, but she's thrown into disarray by the cancer diagnosis. And Heidi and John, your feature, Darcy, this very young, naive, very well-meaning, very innocent young woman coming of age, are basically around a lot of people who have a high potential to be predators, basically. And she's very isolated because her family runs this hotel, so she is intensely vulnerable in a different way.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So I kind of want to go into why each of you decided to make such intense features. And Jim, I'm not sure if Jimmy should go. Jimmy, why don't you go first? Because
right.
There is a very intense story behind your film.
Yeah, so our movie is inspired by real life. So my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer at 23. We were dating at the time and later got engaged, but the film started as just these kind of funny, awkward moments of my wife having appointments with doctors where she's asking questions that only a 23-year-old is going to ask, and somebody who's in their 60s or 70s are not. And that unique perspective of having cancer so young was something that we really wanted to highlight. The vulnerability, Melissa, who wrote it with one of our other writers, Ryan Gruntish, and then me and Johnny Woj helped kind of edit the script. It was all from experiences she had or experiences that people in her support groups had. And I think she wanted to put a voice to something that isn't covered nearly enough, which is young people with cancer, especially late stage cancer.
Mm-hmm. And Heidi, where did the genesis of this story come from?
Well,
And John, I suppose I should ask both of you since you're both co-directors. Sorry, John.
Absolutely. And again, I can start where it started with me. And then, John and actually Tracy came in and filled a void for me. I was looking for my first feature to direct and to produce and be involved in. And having also being an actress who had her start on stage, I was looking for great, great characters, great ensemble characters. But I also wanted to kind of really bring some sort of situation to light that I know so many young teens go through, including my own daughter, and that is that, as John coined it, really, really, quite frankly, that sort of sexual awakening, which is hard enough as it is when you're a teen, but when the rest of the world starts to see that, they react much differently. They see it as a power oftentimes. And especially, it's just very confusing. It's a very confusing time for women and girls as we kind of go into this other direction. And you'll have to forgive me again. It's like 2 a.m. So I'm not as on it as I would be at like 7 a.m. But I do want to say that script that I found in John and Tracy's script really spoke to me. And I think it was a little bit bold of me to do my first feature ever with a script like this. But I also knew that with John and Tracy on board, they were committed to helping me get it finished. And once we found an amazing cast, I knew that we had it there. And I kind of felt like, we'll go bold or go home. I can say probably not only for myself, but for Jimmy, his team, and John, it's so hard getting features out there. It is so, so hard. So when you finally get that shot, you don't want to play around with it. And that means also sometimes being strong and courageous enough to have the voice that you need to have to put it out there. So with that, I'll leave the rest to you, John.
Mm-hmm.
Well, absolutely. Andrea, really the movie started
Andrea.
Andrea. Forgive me, not Andrea. Andrea.
Don't worry.
The movie actually, it started with my wife and I. We saw a news story that was about one of these kind of motels. They're on the outskirts of a town, and people were protesting. People were protesting because what a lot of people don't realize is that these places are used as halfway houses for people, accused of sex crimes. And that way they're away from the city, they're away from schools, they're kind of away from everybody. And they kind of stay there for a couple of months before they are kind of, go back out into society. And, my wife was like, well, that's a really interesting, I've never heard about that before. Maybe we could use that as part of this other movie that we were doing and use it as kind of a backstory type thing. And I'm like, no. That's a whole movie. That's a whole movie. And I incorporated my experience where I had lived at a motel with my family for 2.5 years. And, the kind of people, for those people who've seen like something like the Florida Project or something like that are always sort of, they don't pass through a motel lifestyle. It becomes, actually their home. Is a very an odd assortment of of ne'er-do-wells and criminals and
what
traveling
ne'er-do-wells, right, John? I mean, that's the
exactly.
point. I think that's what drew me to the script was that the rest of the world sees them as ne'er-do-wells, but John and Tracy had a way of writing it in which we were compelled to understand them. And I think the other thing too, just the same with Jimmy and what he brought out was that it's a female-driven story. So that was also what was really interesting to me.
Yeah, and really the movie, more than anything else, it's about empathy. It's about trying to understand another person's, their struggle, their perspective, their hell that they're going through. And, not just making assumptions about everybody.
Yeah, this movie was just dripping with empathy, even for the most repulsive characters. And there was such a danger in this innocence that was where not just Darcy, but the children that were around it. And that innocence shielded them, but you had this sense of foreboding that it could come crashing down on them. we're in with Jimmy's story, like that sense of foreboding all came like, where is this going to go? This young woman who was so full of life and humor, like you genuinely didn't know where this story was going to go, and how she reacted in Jimmy's film. Like, well, it was in a way an anti-cancer story, because she really pushed people away in a darker way you don't really see in stories about people with cancer. Not even like not The Fault in Our Stars, but the other one that came out that way that year, if you know what I mean.
5 feet.
No, not that one.
Okay, not that one.
There was another one. I know it's the tip of my tongue.
We talking about like Me, Earl, and the
Me
Dying
and Earl
Girl,
and the Dying Girl. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
That was a great film, but that was one that we really looked at a lot, because it's a film that it focuses from an outsider's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And that uncertainty that you mentioned, that you picked up on in the film. I mean, that's something that me and my wife, sadly, earlier this year, she passed away from her battle with breast cancer. But before that,
Same.
thank you. But it was, 10 years or so, 9 years of, every day is uncertain. And you live, as a cancer patient, you live 3-month chunks of your life at a time, because that's generally the pace that you're being scanned. So, you get a new treatment, you get scanned, you see if it's working. And if it isn't, you scramble to get a new treatment and hope that there is one, or if it is working, you continue on and hope that it'll continue to work. But then you have another scan in 3 months. So there's just this anxiety, this deep-seated anxiety of, what's tomorrow going to bring, and am I going to have it tomorrow?
Yeah.
That seems remarkably similar to the world Heidi and John were exploring. That what causes that is, it seems, is economic anxiety in a country where the safety net has been chipped away. It seems like, well, I can't say that someone knows what it's like to someone who hasn't suffered through cancer, but it seems like in that situation, you're constantly living month to month, day to day. Like, is something gonna fall through? Am I gonna lose everything? With your movie, John and Heidi too.
Yeah, and I mean, I would say just like sort of Jimmy talked about Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl, and John talked about the Florida Project. I think what I really loved about the script, which was originally known as This Is Nowhere, was the fact that it, first of all, brought it down to the kids' level, right? Peanut and Darcy, and even for that sake, Twinkle, who's a teen herself. And if you look around you, I mean, trafficking is huge in around the world, not just in the United States. We've got a lot of problem where even now during COVID, actually, the problem's been unbelievable, because when kids are not at school, they are in danger because no one's checking in on them. So there's been an increase in there. And I think that kind of looking at this uncertainty in the adults around us and trying to figure it all out, and being told, when you're a kid, what the adult says and does seems like they're gods, right? I mean, they are, and you don't really, you might sense that something's uncertain, but for the most part, you just cope. You make it all normal. And I think that's what I really loved about this script and the story, and which was also the challenge in directing it. I think is trying to make it so that it's. I mean, it was a dark script. It was also tough. It was, John. I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I mean, John and I fought on set sometimes because we were so passionate, and it was just really triggering. I think it was triggering for both of us. We both went through different experiences in our childhoods, and to get through it and want to be honest to it, not just sort of sugarcoat it and look the other way, but at the same time be just, telling the truth in imaginary circumstances, quite frankly. I think that was the big test. And I hope we succeeded. I hope we succeeded in the audience's eyes.
It felt far too real and too realistic at times in both of your films, because, that goes into my next question as to both of you not only describe the pain your protagonists feel, but also the indifference some people feel when looking at this pain and they decide to ignore it. So how did you like decide to keep your empathy and also capture kind of either the cruelty or indifference that some people refuse to help or even acknowledge what another human being is in life-threatening circumstances? So Jimmy, can we start with you?
So, sorry, can you kind of rephrase the question? I think I'm.
Yeah, that I made it long and meandering. Was it? How did you decide to capture the side of, well, when you're exploring someone who's in pain, like your characters are in pain, generally, an underexplored factor is often they are in pain because the adults or people around them are supposed to help them just don't care. Why did you decide to explore that aspect, and how did you keep your compassion when faced with something like that?
Yeah, well, the compassion element, I think, in a lot of ways came from Melissa's just, voice and presence on our set every day. I mean, she was going through chemotherapy. She was teaching students who are living in like subsidized housing how to make documentary films on her days off of chemo, and then she was showing up to set to tell this story. And so the empathy, I think, was just ingrained in who our life circumstances. But that element of lack of empathy, yeah, that's actually me and Melissa were working on, and now I'm kind of finishing a second script where I want to dive much more deep into that, because there's this. My wife in particular saw it a lot, where she usually looked pretty healthy. I mean, you looked at her, especially if she wore her wig and put on makeup, you would not think she was a sick person. And she always felt weird getting out at like a handicapped parking spot, because people would kind of look at her like, oh, are you really sick? And I think that's a challenge for a lot of people who are going through breast cancer or any kind of cancer, really. You don't always see that. But I also think there was a level of, just because you get cancer, you're not a saint. And I think that was something that really resonated. We did a lot of community screenings with support groups and nonprofits who focus on cancer. And, a lot of people came up to us and were like, thank you for showing a flawed person with cancer. This is something that, isn't seen enough. And I think, trying to show the hope and send that message of hope that there are people who care. They might not know how to express it, but you hopefully have support groups who are there for you. And so that was a big factor we want to keep in our script.
And thank you for that. And Heidi and John, it was again intense in a whole different way, because when Darcy goes through, what she goes through, this horrific experience that, thank you for not showing, because I'm not sure I could have, her own mother says, I've got nothing for you, basically.
Right. No, and that is,
it felt very true as to how a person in that situation could cope.
Well, exactly. The film is filled with all of these interpersonal relationships where people are struggling between their own self-interest and actually trying to care about their family members. And it's always a battle between that. And, you take a character like Ali, who's a pimp, but he's also a father, and he is, he is always trying to convince himself that he's a better man than he actually is.
And so it's my character, Tony, for that matter, John. Right. I'm trying to,
yeah. Right, exactly. So it's always this, it's always this battle between I'm not really like every other pimp, or I'm not really like every other person staying at this motel. That's not who I am. I'm better than this. And this constant tug of war between, our better, the better angels, is really, to me, what is the most interesting, and the fact that her mother does care,
Yeah,
but
totally.
she doesn't have anything left. And
Yeah.
that moment when she is so honest and says, I blew it all on myself, and I don't have anything for you, that shocks people. But somewhere along the line, we stopped believing our parents are human, and humans have a tendency to think of themselves before they think of other people. That is always going to be,
especially when you're under that constant stress.
Exactly.
Living on that razor's edge.
Right. Well, I want to, now that my daughter is a teenager, I have to say it was funny because actually Sophie's in the film. She has a very small piece, and she was 9. And at the time I remember with Gus, who's brilliant at Darcy. I mean, she brought all the vulnerability, everything. I think John and I were very blessed to have her as our lead for this. At the time I was like, nah, I can't be, everyone was like, the mother's so, but then I have to say that I totally get the mother. I totally get the mother. When you have a teenage girl, you're just like, I don't have anything left for you. But I just, Andrea, if I could, I just want to add to what Jimmy was saying and bring this around to John, is that 5 or 4 months before we shot, my father died of cancer.
Oh, wow.
2 days before Christmas.
Just a month ago, my aunt died of cancer. I found out just as we were about to leave to go see her for the last time too. I was trying not to mention that.
It's devastating. And then
I couldn't see her earlier because of COVID.
Exactly.
So
that's terrible.
I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. She was, but
I think these things have to be portrayed in film, whether or not it's popular or pop culture or whatever. And I was also going to say that my son was really sick before, so I had all of this emotional energy and I didn't know what to do with it. And I went into this mode that Jimmy was talking about with his wife, where you're just doing, and it came to a point where I was just really grateful. I hated him at the time for it, but the more distance I have from it, the better I am with it. And John was like, Heidi, stop, just stop. And I think at that point, then I was able actually to take, and I'm so grateful that I got to act as well, because I was able to take all of that energy and put it into my character. And you don't see it because we actually have a different ending than what we ended up with, which was, Andrea, if you felt that the film as it is was wrong, you should see the original ending.
Oh, geez. Do I want to know this?
Well, I don't know, John. Should we tell her what the original ending?
She kind of predicted it, what she was talking about before, as far as the innocence of Peanut.
What happened? Yeah.
So, well, could you relate to your character though, because your character is the one who stops the guy from helping Darcy and says, stay out of it,
Yeah, I went up to John at one point and I was like, how am I going to portray this character? I mean, I feel like I'm not from the South. I'm not all these different things. But then at the same time, I was like, you're an actress. Don't make it wrong. Make it right. Use what you have and do your research, So I actually did a lot of research on women who find themselves in situations where they're prostituting themselves. And prostitute can be sexual, but let's face it, it can be anything. If you're constantly giving of yourself to others when you don't really want to, but you're doing it for your own survival, that in a sense is also prostituting, right? When it's leveraged out of you. And I found that most of these women were not super skinny, they've been worn out by life. They're just normal women. And they got themselves in these situations where there was no other way. So I think for me, what I tried to really find is the sense of when you get that low, you tell yourself stories and lies, and you have to believe those lies. Your survival is based upon believing those lies. Otherwise, you can't get out. You will die from your own despair. And that's how I felt. So, on the one hand, there's a part of me that with Darcy, I think I'm jealous of her. right? If she gets herself in this situation and she doesn't know what to do, well, then no one was there for me. And I think a lot of women have that with younger women. I hate to say it. It used to be, at least it used to be like when I was younger, I never really got it. But there's just a certain amount of like, okay, guess what? I had to go through this. You have to go through this. And if you're too dumb to know not to go through it, then you're going to have to learn. And that was the old way of teaching, right? So
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, right. And I think that's where she has that. And on top of it, in terms of like, I think we talked a lot about my relationship with, my partner, who's clearly sleeping around on top of doing everything else. And it's like, I have to believe, because he's my bread and butter. He's literally the thing for me that I tell Darcy she needs for her, which is to find a man. And for women, I hate, there's women. I mean, this is not an uncommon in our country. This is not uncommon. There's
in the world.
And around the world, we have like, people like to think that there's only, and it's not the truth. The truth is actually closer to my character, Tony, than around the world than what we think it is. And that's the sad part.
Definitely. So, yeah, we've been focusing so much on your movie. I want to ask Jimmy a question about his, and that, wow, I need to breathe after that a little bit. You didn't just capture Ginger's limitations very well. You captured her friends who were really wanting to take care of her, but also like the people, sort of like the people in your film, Heidi and John, but they also had to say, no, enough is enough. You can't act this way. This is as much as we can give. Was that hard portraying that in light of like the story behind the film in a way?
Yes and no. I mean, there were challenges in the sense that, which elements to portray, which elements to dramatize. There was, the relationship with the boss is actually pretty similar to what actually happens with what actually happened with Melissa, where she was diagnosed with cancer, and then her boss, she calls in to tell her boss that she can't work that day, and her boss is like, well, it's not like you can't work, right? So
that actually happened.
Quit. Oh yeah, that happened.
Jesus.
Yeah, her manager at a Starbucks.
Starbucks. It makes sense. Anyway, sorry, go on.
But then there's other relationships, like her friend, Bree, who is her best friend in the world and is there for her for everything. But, when you're going through something so serious, we saw firsthand where, you start to project some of that anger and that frustration that comes with being, ill with a disease that could become terminal. And, those tensions build up. And I think that was one of the most beautiful moments in the film for me, was when Ginger is really upset with her mom, and her mom kind of sets her straight. And it's that classic kind of, the daughter thinks that the mother is being overbearing and trying to control everything and doesn't get it. And then the mother's like, why don't you just listen to me? I want to help you. And, these tensions happen, and it's just, it's very true to life. So I think, we obviously dramatized it. Melissa's mom is not quite Deborah, but it's this desire for the people around, extremely ill people, that we want to help them. We want to help fix things, but there's not always a way to do that. And sometimes the best thing we can do is just be there, or listen, or just respect the fact that they need some space. And that goes both ways. And I think most people who are battling through cancer, especially people who are in relationships, they see that the people around them who really care about them and love them are going to do anything for them and going to do everything they can. But sadly, there's just only so much that can be done.
Was it, in both of these characters, you show them make, how did you maintain that delicate balance of kind of, Jimmy, I want to direct this to you first, because with Heidi and John, it'll get pretty, how do you allow your characters, because this can be difficult for female characters to make such idiotic decisions, but kind of ensure that you're not blaming them when it all comes crashing down.
Yeah. Well,
You're not blaming, shaming. Obviously, none of you are.
yeah, I think a lot of that, it's tone, and I think for us, it's Ginger is a goofy person, and her friends are funny people, and I think when you see somebody who is just kind of quirky like Ginger, and she's doing things that might be a little bit outside the norm or outside the box, it's less about judging them and just accepting that they're a unique person. And I think so much credit needs to go to Susan Gordon, who plays Ginger as well. I mean, she was one of. I mean, we auditioned hundreds of people for the roles in our movie, and Susan came in just this. So at first she read that it was a cancer film, and she read the sides, and she was, being really dramatic. And we're like, no, Ginger's a funny girl. She's kind of quirky and comical. And Susan just took that and ran. I mean, she started making jokes about being like a clown with cancer. And, me and Melissa, actually Melissa wasn't there, but we were cracking up. We were just sitting there laughing and laughing. And it's this ability to laugh at some of the really serious moments in our lives, I think kind of helps balance that, whether or not we're judging or being, judgmental over decisions and choices, especially in a circumstance that there is no right choice. I think that's it's in the cancer community. It's a lot of people dislike the term, fighting cancer or fighting a battle against cancer, because you're not fighting, you're ill, and it makes it seem like if you lost your battle to cancer that you've made some kind of mistake or that you've given up or something. That's just not the case. It's a terminal disease, and there's sadly nothing we can do at a certain point.
Right.
And Heidi and John, like in your film, Darcy makes bad decision after bad decision, especially with this one guy, which would be so obvious to an adult, but you can also, and this is obvious to the viewers, even probably the teenage ones, but you very much keep her compassion, like, yeah, this is how a teenage girl would act probably in this situation. So how do you just how did you maintain that delicate balance of letting her be a dumb teen without blaming or really condemning her?
Well, I honestly, I think that innocence is, emotional intelligence. I think that, when we lose the characters that have lost their innocence in Darcy are the characters that are emotionally bereft. No matter what she does, no matter how she's trying to reach out, she's trying to connect, whatever she's doing it with a pure heart. She's doing it because, she wants connection. She wants something more than, and because of that, I think that she comes out probably maybe less scathed than some of the other characters in the film. I think we all can have hope for Darcy. I don't know if there's hope for her mother. I don't know if there's hope for her father. Is there hope for Ali? Is there hope for Tony? That's debatable. But I think we all can have hope for Darcy. So yes. I really believe that all of her decisions are they're not dumb decisions. They're decisions to trust and to believe. And I
guess from an adult perspective, like trusting and believing the certain people she does.
Yes.
No experienced adult would, I guess, I'm not trying to blame or condemn her either, but no experienced adult woman, I think, would trust and believe the person she does, I think. Well, very few, I think.
I wanted to add that I think that's also the more interesting choice, right? I mean, from the actor's perspective, it's really important not to judge your character and to really.
I wasn't judging her. I'm like,
absolutely.
I'm just saying from, that's how, in terms of how we took this on, right? In terms of how we also worked with the actors to take this on is not to just take any judgments when you're studying your character, to take all judgments away, basically. And so it could have gone completely wrong. I mean, Gus could have played the role with judgment involved, right? And maybe some might have even think that might be more of an active protagonist had she been making these judgment calls. But how often do we find ourselves in situations through naivety or whatnot where we had no idea what we were getting into until it was too late, right? And then, and I think that happens at that age all the time. And on top of it, for girls, you're told to just go along with everything, especially
yes, definitely.
You're not supposed to really question people.
You know, it's really interesting. My wife always says this. She says anytime that she's ever ended up in a sexual situation with a man, it was a total surprise to her. It was like she thought the whole thing was going one direction, and then all of a sudden, at the end of the night, something completely different happened.
We had that moment, and I'll wrap that up real quick because I know we don't have a lot of time. But you know, we had that moment also on set because John and then Jonathan Tchaikovsky, who does a great job playing Luke, almost too great because it's like easy to like
yeah, exactly.
And then Gus and you know, there's a moment where Gus goes in. Actually, you know, she's got the new dress on. She goes in. She wants to see him, and you know, the two guys in the room, John and Jonathan, were like, oh yeah, she wants more than a kiss. And I'm like, guys, no, she doesn't. She has this fairy tale notion in her mind. This is her prince. She just wants a kiss. And they're like,
romance.
Yes, right. Exactly. With the romance.
Whatever that means.
So finally, I kicked the guys out of the room. I'm like, okay, Gus, what do you think? I really want to know what you think in this situation. Are you really thinking about more than, what are you thinking about? I'm not even putting judgments on you. You tell me. And she's like, well, I'm thinking just a kiss. Like, it'd be awesome. Like, you know, my first kiss ever. That's supposed to be amazing, especially around 16. So it goes to show you how there's oftentimes a lot of different misinterpretations as well. It's along with like what John was saying about Tracy and her experiences. And they were unfortunately my experiences too. So
yeah, a lot of women have had those experiences where you are told, socialized to go along with it, even if you're not comfortable. You know, even if it wasn't that kind of explicit situation. And you know what? Probably a lot of men have been in that situation. I think the more I research, the more.
Very good point. Very good point.
But men aren't allowed to talk about it, I think.
Yeah. No, and you know, historically in films, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Andrea, oftentimes if you think Lolita, right, it makes the girl a femme fatale, like she wanted it. And what I found so refreshing about this was that it was showing us something else. So.
And that brings me around to the fact that both of these films felt very honest. So, and sometimes, well, frankly, the industry doesn't want that kind of honesty. They want simplistic, more stories where people can be kind of easily categorized along with the story. So, Jimmy, I want to ask this of you first. Did you have trouble selling a story with a more complicated, well, basically, as you put it earlier, a flawed cancer patient, which should be hard?
Yeah. So we had one benefit that me and Melissa were at DePaul getting a MFA in cinema directing. So we kind of utilized that equipment and the locations they had to sort of prevent us having to actually get too many investors involved. And so we didn't really need approval, though we did get a lot of feedback on our script. And yes, we had several people tell us that, you know, you know, it's really hard to make a cancer movie, or you can't make a movie in a hospital, or, you know, cancer movies are hard to sell, or, you know, whatever. And it just became noise after a while. You know, we knew we were making this movie. We knew we wanted it to be what it is, you know, a honest portrayal of what it's like to have cancer with a little bit of comedy involved. And, you know, at the end of the day, I'm glad we moved forward and we told the story, because by the time we got to, you know, table reads and starting to cast, I mean, people would start tearing up and crying just reading the script, and then we start filming scenes. I mean, I remember, I the head shave scene is usually the most infamous scene in the movie, and we actually shaved Susan's head, and I don't think anybody realizes how long that takes. It's not a fast process, and so even during filming on set, I remember it was well, even I underestimated, and I had shaved Melissa's head a few times at that point, but it was 15 minutes to shave the head from start to end, and our poor boom operator standing with her arms above her head, and she's like shaking, and by the time we call cut, she's crying because like her arms are exhausted. My wife Melissa is crying because she's reliving all these moments in her treatment, and Susan Gordon's crying because she's so in character and she just shaved her head, and it was a lot of emotions, and I think fortunately that was the last thing we shot that day because of all the emotions we knew would be involved. But I think when you can feel that level of raw and just truth when you're telling the story and when you're seeing people's reactions, you're on the right track. And I think anybody who tells you otherwise because it can't be sold is just naysaying, and at some point you just gotta ignore that.
Seems so from an outsider's perspective of someone who's not a filmmaker. Heidi, John, but I mentioned it must have been a real tough sell for you to depict people like this as so human. Always, like most people want to write these people off or depict them as one-dimensional caricatures. So, how did you guys convince people, I guess, to get this made?
I just wanted to say from the producer's point of view, okay, so the script was loved right away. We got some of the best actors wanting to audition from some of the top agencies. Everyone loved it. Our audiences have loved it in all the festivals. That being said, the larger festivals had their reservations because I think of the very subject matter. And I'd also have to say that distribution wasn't easy at first either. First of all, because it was my first film and I didn't really have someone who had gotten distribution sort of mentoring me along the way, but also because anytime I think you're going to do something different that needs to be done or be a pioneer in a way, I mean, they talk about the 1970s genre film and they talk about the auteur film. There was a time and place where this stuff was loved. And honestly, I love being in Europe for that reason, because you can go, it's, you are allowed to test the boundaries still. It's not made for, it's real truth-telling cinematically, and even if there's mistakes, and it's the authenticity which really matters. So, no, it's been difficult, Andrea, and that's why it's wonderful that there's festivals like yours where you're also a critic, where you put your power behind it, because it empowers us to tell more stories. John,
thank you.
Jimmy understands this. You've just got to get the film to the people. There are a lot of gatekeepers that think that they know what the people want, but we've really found that once people actually see this film, they are surprised, they are moved, sometimes they're incensed, but they have a passionate feeling about it. So you did your job. So and Heidi has done a wonderful job of persevering. Because it's not an easy thing when you don't have an A-list actor, where people know, well, why should I watch this movie? Oh, because this person's in it. Oh, okay. Well, then then I will, distribute this movie. I will have this film in my film festival. Then once again, you've got to find a way to get to the people. And the one good thing is that film really has no shelf life. Films find their time, and even though we've did this film a few years ago, we're finding a whole new audience and a whole new way to get it out there now. So I just want to share the story, because I think it's a powerful one.
Well,
Definitely
we shot it a few
is.
years ago. We actually finished it in February 2020, by the time we could finally afford color correction and color grading.
Oh, wow.
So I just wanted to say, Andrea, Jimmy, I can't wait to see your movie, though. And I'm really glad that I got this chance to hear about it.
Oh, thank you.
I'm like, where is it on? I kind of feel like, where are films on things like Netflix, right? Well, people are binging because I have tons of family members in my family who have gone through cancer, and I know they would love a film like this.
Yeah.
Well, send them my way. You can't see him. I'm rubbing my hands together.
I'm in Wisconsin, so there you go.
Thank you. And yeah, Jim, my next question is, now that we've covered the really heavy topics, is, Jimmy, you mentioned a little bit about how your lead actress would help keep the mood up on set. Like, was that a constant thing? Because you just mentioned how heavy the mood could get and how obviously emotional this was for you and her and for everybody, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a team effort. You know, one of our producers, Johnny Woj, was amazing producer who, you know, I like to joke was the set therapist for us, and just let everybody vent and just kind of decompress. We also had a really unique schedule because we had such a micro budget for this movie that you know, we filmed as much as possible on weekends so that people could have the week to work their day jobs and do their thing. So we had, you know, a fair amount of breaks in between, which kind of helped, you know, let you decompress after a really intense weekend of filming. Susan, though, yes, Susan is just a very funny person. So is Megan Flood, who plays Bree. They're both just hilarious. And the second they met, you know, they never met each other before we cast the both of them, but there was instant chemistry. And so, you know, Megan is a improv actor here in Chicago. Susan does all kinds of acting, but is just an amazingly funny human being. So, you know, when you put them together, it's kind of like, you know, you call cut, but the laughter starts after that because, you know, something's funny happened during set or you know, one of my favorites is Susan. Sometimes we get a little too into character, and I remember our set designer being like, "Okay, Susan, this is the set food. Don't eat the set food." And she's just like, "Well, what if I need to eat the set food?" And she's like, "You don't need to eat the set food." And once we called action, she ate the set food. And, you know, it was frustrating, but also really, really funny in moments where, you know, we're doing heavy scenes and it's just kind of like, okay, a piece of garlic bread's gone. I think we can live with that continuity, or we'll just get some more garlic bread or something. But yeah, I think the personalities are what really helped it. Yeah, I think that's the case for any, you know, indie film. I mean, the lower the budget, the better the personalities of the people on set need to be, because there's just so much more tension and stress that builds up over the course of making the film.
And yeah, Heidi, John, did you manage to keep the mood up while filming this very intense?
I'm just going to point the finger at John. I mean, I have to say there, yes,
we're blaming you, John.
John is constant about bringing up high energy level, a lot of happiness. He's always great. He and his wife, Tracy, were literally making scrambled eggs for everybody every morning. And I mean, I love having fun and I'm really into it. But I am a little bit more sort of serious, I think, more than you know, that's his credo, and I think I have to give him credit for that, because he really brought the energy up every single day.
Well, Heidi did an incredible job producing this film, because we got to live together as a family, you know, in this motel 5 days, and then we would have to pack up and leave for 2 days on the weekends, and then we would come back for the next 5 days. So we shot the whole film in 13 days, and it really felt like a summer camp. You know, everybody was connecting, all of these were, you know, even though Gus and Maggie Warner, who plays her mother, you know, were very estranged on camera, to get, you know, when they were off camera, they were just like two peas in a pod, and they just absolutely loved each other.
You mean
Heidi with Peanut
and Bernadette Quigley.
Yes. So I mean, pardon me. I mentioned someone else from another movie. Forgive me.
He's made
So it was just an amazing way to make a movie that we really never had to really leave set, and we ate together, we played together, and we shot together all pretty much in the same place. So that was a great way to make that particular film.
Excellent.
Yeah, I was also going to add one thing that also kept our set pretty, just at least moving forward was Melissa, my wife Melissa's just dedication towards the film. So a story we'd share a lot is that it was the second day of casting so Melissa was diagnosed at 23 with early stage cancer, but when we were on our second day of casting was when she was actually diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer, where it spread to various organs. So we took a very big step back and we're like, is this something we still want to do? A feature film is a big commitment. And, she was the one who's like, if there was ever a time that this movie needs to be made, it's now. And so she was the reason we kept moving forward. And I think that presence and that determination from somebody going through something so serious motivated every single person on set, no matter how difficult or lighthearted the day was, to just keep moving forward and making this movie the best we could.
Mm-hmm. And I want to also, we're getting close to the end of our time, so I just want to ask each of you, what do you love most about making films? Heidi, why don't we start with you, actually?
What is there not to love? I have my family, and then I have film. And those are my two loves in my life. If I'm not with my family, then I'm with my film, and the people I make films with are my family. And I think I love every single part of it. I love the fact that you can have people from all different walks of life with totally different skill sets, totally different things that they're good at, and you can bring them together and you create this piece that is telling a story, and that is the fabric of our existence on Earth. So that's my answer.
Anyone want to follow up with that?
Well, for me, it's what brought me and my wife together. It's so many, we just love telling stories and showing the world either as it is or how we wish it would be. And as long as it's a film that is character driven, I love going into different genres of film, but it has to be real. It has to be something that people can relate to, and it is, it's my passion. There's so many great stories that don't get told, and most of the time it's the story of the ordinary person caught up in the extraordinary circumstance. And I've made 19 of those so far, and I'd love to get to 100 if I could.
And last but not least, Jimmy?
Yeah, personally, I have been making movies. We were talking before we started recording this that about our first films, and the first time I ever made a movie was with my parents' old VHS tape. Rewinding on the VCR and then plugging it back in to do a cut. And it was in the first grade. I did a rendition of the Three Little Bears. And and I kept doing that. I grew up during that the era of making backyard wrestling videos where we would jump off a treehouse. And
Three Little Bears is a thriller, Jimmy. That's a story.
I'm telling you, man. It gets bloody. And also just more personal to myself is just that my wife and I met in film school. We met at Loyola studying film as undergrads. We went on to get master's degrees together, and we started a business making films and making mostly marketing videos, but that led to making movies. And so it's a passion and a way of life that I couldn't see doing another career and being as happy. So it's just something I have to do, I guess.
Beautiful.
That is. So I guess with about the 5 minutes we have left, I want to ask each of you my traditional last question of these filmmaker Q&As. What's next for you? Jimmy, why don't we just kick off with you and we'll go around.
Sure. So a lot is going on. So with Ginger, we started doing what we call community screenings. So we would get support groups and just people in the community who were excited about the story to, we'd rent a movie theater, we'd sell tickets, and we'd do a screening. And we would use the funds raised to support nonprofits and breast cancer related organizations like the American Cancer Society. We did a lot of work with. And that ended up leading to Melissa and I founding the Melissa and Jimmy Borton Foundation, which is a nonprofit who's going to focus on making films that support people impacted by cancer and try to build hope and share experiences from different cancer related areas. But also I'm still working on, and my wife and I started a script for essentially a sequel that's going to cover a lot more of the caregiver relationship. The husband and wife going through a terminal cancer in their 30s. So Ginger and Bree, Susan and Megan are both on board, and Susan's actually working on a song. She's an amazing singer, and we're writing an original piece for the next movie. So that's all coming soon.
Awesome. And Heidi, John?
John, why don't you go first?
Sure. Well, I'm sure Heidi will tell you about Darcy and, where you can find it and that type of thing. My wife and I are just finishing the edit on our last feature film that we completed. We finished in December, so it was right before all the craziness happened, which was very, very, very fortunate for us. And so that's called Girl in the Palms. And I like to describe that as sort of like Eat, Pray, Love meets Amelie, sort of a Florida fever dream. So that should be coming out hopefully in December, and we're going to start doing a film festival run. And then we've got about 3 or 4 other features that we're always looking for people, always looking for money to make more movies.
Aren't we all?
Oh yes. Well, not me, because I'm not a filmmaker per se, but can relate to do what I do. And yeah, that's about our. Oh wait, sorry, Heidi isn't gone yet.
Yes.
Sorry.
So let's see. Making my first feature taught me that I wanted to go back and get my MBA. So I'm about 1 semester shy of my MBA in management, and I've got 3 feature film scripts in development. The one that's closest up to starting to really go somewhere is a rom-com, because I needed to laugh now. And it's intercultural clash culture rom-com. And then on top of that, there's a drama and another intercultural clash culture rom-com and 2 series. So I think as soon as I get done with my MBA, I'll be able to go a little bit faster and get the whole assembly line going. But for now, I'm pretty happy where I am.
Lovely.
Oh, and managing my daughter's film career too now. So
nice. Yeah.
That's
The circle of life, as it were.
yes.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, all of you, not just for being here and working with me, but for allowing me to screen your films in the festival. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much. We can't thank you enough.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Well, that's a wrap, as it were. So good night. Get some sleep, Heidi.
I will.
Right.
And that's a wrap on your weekend, right? Of panels?
Yep. Basically, I'm going to have a few more throughout the week. But yeah, for this weekend, yeah. And tomorrow there's none. So as far as I know. So yes.
Well, I look forward to seeing all the films that you've got going on. And Jimmy, I'll look for yours.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah, I actually
likewise.
put the
I'm
trailer.
excited for years.
Yeah, I actually put the trailer for your films before each other. So
Oh, nice.
yeah.
Cool.
Awesome. All right.
Thank you.
Have a good one, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Night.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.